A living person is carrying a dead one, with their hometown hundreds of kilometers away as the destination. They have very little money, far from enough for the travel expenses. How should they finish this journey? This is definitely the best road movie in China, no doubt about it. You can see the real spiritual core of ordinary Chinese people in it. Now, let the story start. In a restaurant, Lao Zhao was dead drunk. While his workmate Liu had already passed out. He looked like he'd drunk himself, completely senseless. The two hit the road, boarding an intercity bus from Shenzhen to Kunming. Along the way, the driver stopped to let everyone take a bathroom break. Men to the left, women to the right, peeing right there in the middle of nowhere. But Liu didn't get off. Instead, he stared at the women in the grass. When he was caught, everyone started yelling, calling Liu a pervert. Lao Zhao quickly stepped forward to explain. Lao Zhao had to apologize to smooth things over. The little commotion died down, but they hadn't driven far when they ran into robbers. The robbers' hats were nearly stuffed full of loot. Seeing he couldn't avoid it, Lao Zhao obediently handed over his money. But Liu just kept pretending to sleep no matter what the robbers said.
说这话就是对我这个行业最大的侮辱。我上抢天下抢地，中枪攻击，还有我不能拿的？
私人的钱你能拿吗？
死了。
死了。
哎，咋回事？
That's when Lao Zhao told them the whole story. The two of them worked at a construction site. A few days earlier, the workers were drinking together when Liu suddenly dropped dead. When the boss found out, he paid 50 yuan to settle it, and that was it. Liu's life ended in such a lousy way. His whole family had depended on him to get by. He'd sold his labor his whole life, cheap as it was, but at least it put food on the table. And now, 50 yuan to buy him out. So Lao Zhao had to get that money to his family. The robbers just shook their heads when they heard this. The reason he was still carrying the body? In their hometown, there's a taboo against dying away from home otherwise. You'd become a homeless ghost in your next life. Lao Zhao had promised to take him back to his hometown. When alive, you see the person. When dead, you see the body. He had to give Liu's family an explanation. The robbers were touched by Lao Zhao's loyalty. With that, they gave all the loot they'd just stolen to Lao Zhao, threatened the passengers not to take any of it, then left with their crew. He watched the robbers leave. The passengers, who'd been as quiet as mice a moment before, suddenly got bold. They swarmed Lao Zhao, snatching their belongings back until nothing was left. Then, after the bus drove a bit more, some people started complaining.
这拉个死人在车里，这让我们大家怎么做呀？
就是，谁知道有什么传染病？我也要退票，退票。
Their words came one after another, cutting like knives, all aimed at Lao Zhao. They completely forgot it was the dead man they'd scorned who just saved everyone. The group showed their true ugliness, making even the robbers look decent by comparison. Under pressure from everyone on the bus, Lao Zhao had no choice but to get off, carrying Liu on his back. In the middle of nowhere, he had to walk. Occasionally a car passed, but no one paid any attention to his waves. Luckily, a tractor came by before long. Lao Zhao lied, saying Liu had a heart attack and passed out, and finally got a ride. When they reached the city, Lao Zhao was ready to get off, but the driver insisted on being kind and took them to the hospital. Scared of blowing his cover, Lao Zhao quickly gave the driver some money to help register, then carried Liu around all night until he found a truck driver's rest stop. After asking around, only one driver was heading to Chongqing, but he refused to take them, and he seemed to be in a terrible mood. That night, while he was sleeping, a hand slipped into Lao Zhao's pocket, but sound asleep, he didn't feel a thing. Early the next morning, he found his entire savings had been stolen. Lao Zhao insisted on searching everyone, but the others refused and threatened to call the police. But if the police came, they'd find Liu. Frustrated, Lao Zhao had to give up.
我不要了，你们走吧。
哎，你什么意思啊？你到底丢没丢钱？
我不要了还不行吗？
这把我们当什么了？这是？
我不要了，我不要了。
走吧。
送礼了，给你们了，还不行吗？
Lao Zhao had no choice but to keep going, carrying his friend. The driver, who'd refused to take them the night before, pulled up beside him and told him to get in. Lao Zhao was confused last night. He'd offered money and been turned down. Now, with no money, the driver was picking him up. The driver, who'd seen what happened that morning, asked why he was afraid of the police. Seeing he couldn't keep lying, Lao Zhao had to tell the truth.
他死了。你看我像坏人吗？送回老家，入土为安。
After hearing Lao Zhao's explanation, the driver calmly kept driving. This was Lao Zhao's most relaxed moment since setting out. He looked at the scenery along the way and started singing.
记住我的情啊，记住我的爱哟哈，记住我的心，天天在等待呀，我在等待你回来呀，千万不要把我来忘怀呀，千万不要把我来忘怀呀。对不起，我唱的是不是太难听了？ 我想让你高兴。
When the driver heard him, he slammed on the brakes and grabbed Lao Zhao by the neck. The song had reminded him of his ex-girlfriend, and suddenly he burst into tears. He'd met the love of his life on this very road, and had sworn he'd marry her once he'd driven 300 kilometers. But now he'd hit that milestone, and his girlfriend was gone. He'd never figured out what love was, from start to finish.
你冷静点，哥问你，你爱他不吧？你爱你都开30万了，你再开30万把他找着啊！
再开30万，
那可不。
啊，再开30万。
The car drove on until dusk, stopping at a fork in the road. The driver decided to go find his love. Lao Zhao, carrying Liu, kept going. With each other's blessings, they took their separate paths. After walking a long time, Lao Zhao still hadn't gotten a ride until a car broke down on the road. He went over, struck up a conversation, offering to help push if the driver would give him a ride. The driver agreed readily, but once the car started, he sped off.
吃别带冒烟啊你呀！
Walking a bit more, hungry and exhausted, Lao Zhao came across a village holding a funeral. Hoping to sneak a meal, he thought of putting Liu down, disguising him as a scarecrow. Slipping into the crowd, the sound of everyone crying made him think of all the hardships he'd been through, and he burst out crying at the top of his lungs. He couldn't stop. He looked even sadder than the deceased's relatives. When it was time to eat, Lao Zhao couldn't stop either. He ate an entire table's worth of food and still wasn't full. Suddenly, an old man sat down next to him. Lao Zhao glanced over casually and nearly jumped out of his skin. The old man was the one the funeral was for.
我就是躺在里面那个。兄弟，陪我喝杯啊！来来来。啊，干！
Turns out, he wasn't dead. With no children, he'd worried he'd be lonely after death, so he wanted to hold his own funeral while he was still alive. Those wailing and crying were all hired actors. But in the end, their acting wasn't as good as Lao Zhao's, so he'd climbed out of the coffin to ask him about it. That's when Lao Zhao told him about returning a fallen leaf to its roots. The old man was moved. He gave Lao Zhao the village's secret corpse preservative so Lu could last a few more days and a handcart. And so, Lao Zhao hit the road again. Walking from night till dawn, his steps grew slower and slower. The tension in his heart grew tighter and tighter. An old ox easily passed him by, and that got Lao Zhao competitive. He'd endured nothing but cold stares and mistreatment this whole way. Being bullied by people was one thing. He wasn't going to let an ox bully him too, so he gathered his strength and chased after it. With the help of a cyclist, Lao Zhao not only caught up but climbed all the way to the top in one go. The two boiled coffee, looked into the distance, and their mood lifted. Shouting out loud toward the mountains, all their fatigue melted away. The cyclist's destination was Tibet. He'd always had a 3-minute attention span for everything, but this time, he was determined to give it his all, arriving by his 28th birthday, a special gift to himself. At that moment, Lao Zhao, who'd been carrying Liu all this way, seemed to catch the cyclist's vitality. After saying goodbye, they set off again. The cyclist was first, arms outstretched, racing down the hillside, and Lao Zhao looked full of life too. The handcart was broken. Lao Zhao looked up and saw someone who was even more badly hurt. He went over to strike up a conversation and borrowed the person's tire. Covered in dust, Lao Zhao stuffed Lao Lu into the tire and set off again.
你干啥玩意儿？回来了，你回来了啊！你又回来了，你又回来了。哎呀妈呀！哎，我兄弟，哎，完了，慢点人！哎呀，哎呀妈呀！完了，干嘛呀？哎呀妈呀！
Lao Zhao's tire cart tipped over once more. Fortunately, there wasn't a living person inside. He continued carrying Lao Lu on his back, climbing over mountains and crossing ridges. He walked for so long that his shoes were worn out. So he took off Lao Lu's shoes, planning to put them on his own feet. Unexpectedly, there was some private money hidden under the insole, a glimmer of hope in desperation, a sudden turn for the better. He took out the 50 yuan compensation money that belonged to Lao Lu and discussed with the deceased. He planned to rent a car for the final stretch of the journey. Because if he kept carrying Lao Lu on his back, the body would definitely start to smell. Lao Zhao intended to borrow the money from Lao Lu first, vowing to return it to Lao Lu's family later. Then he hid Lao Lu and went out alone to find a car, stopping to have a meal along the way. But when it was time to pay, the restaurant owner asked for 600 yuan.
600。
多少
？600。
？600。吃啥玩意儿？600。
不是要肉，我给你来只野鸡。要条鱼，河里的娃娃鱼，娃娃鱼一条400，一只野鸡200。菜米饭白送的，正好600吗？
Feeling cheated, Lao Zhao tried to reason with him. However, when he saw the thugs the owner called over, he had no choice but to pay obediently. Not only did he spend the 400 yuan he found under the insole, but he also had to take 2 more 100 yuan notes from the 50 yuan. After walking out of that shady restaurant, Lao Zhao was so regretful that he slapped himself in the face. Just then, the group of people chased after him, saying the last 200 yuan he gave was counterfeit. Lao Zhao couldn't believe it, so he gave them 2 more notes, but those were fake too. It turned out all the 50 yuan compensation the boss had given was counterfeit.
我受骗了，兄弟，我受骗了。我
别在这演了，你
我真受骗了，大兄弟，我那啥呢？这是
浑水摸鱼啊！
不是，你听我跟你说啊，你别来。
你还在演？
不是，你听我说，怎么个事呢？工地人老板给开的钱。
老子这开啊？你吃白食是不是？
我不是吃白食。
我告诉你，跑错地儿了。
别，
那得打你。
For the first time during this journey filled with laughter, Lao Zhao cried. While sobbing, he dug a hole for Lao Lu. After finishing the hole, he thought he'd lie down inside to cool off. But once he lay down, he suddenly didn't want to get up anymore. A gentle breeze blew through the white clouds and green trees. Lao Zhao's back, which had never been straight in his life, was held upright by the earth. All the weight he'd been carrying on his shoulders crashed down, fully embraced by the remaining land. The soil was fresh and moist, emitting a refreshing scent. At that moment, he even felt as if he was lying in water, soft and dazed.
太舒服了。
Maybe death felt like this, he thought. Like a drop of water merging into the ocean, it was too comfortable. He picked some rapeseed flowers to cover Lao Lu's body. Then he tied a big stone to himself, tidied his clothes, smoothed his hair, sat beside Lao Lu, and finally hugged the stone tightly. Death was just a thought, but in the end, it lost to his survival instinct. Lao Zhao was knocked unconscious by the stone. When he woke up, he found that a beekeeper's family had saved him. It was a family of 3, living a simple but happy life. During the meal, the hostess still wore a hat, which made Lao Zhao a little curious. Noticing his gaze, the woman calmly lifted her veil, revealing a disfigured face that shocked Lao Zhao. Her husband explained that they used to work in a factory. His wife was caught in a boiler explosion, which left her looking like this. At first, people stared and pointed at us everywhere, and she hated her own appearance too, he said. The woman was overcome with despair and even thought about suicide countless times. At that moment of abyss, her husband made a decision to become a beekeeper, stay away from crowds, and turn their home into a mobile one. Where there were flowers and honey, that's where they would settle. The beekeeper's story calmed Lao Zhao down, and he decided to continue his journey. Human beings are always like this. Both their fragility and resilience exceed their own imagination. Sometimes they feel so fragile that they want to die in an instant. Other times, they find that they can keep going a long way even when gritting their teeth, as long as there's a little strength and a glimmer of hope left. When Lao Zhao left, the mother was helping her son recite a text.
如果我的祖国是一条大路，我就是辆汽车，我开啊开，我真快乐。
Lao Zhao listened carefully, reluctant to leave. The beekeeper drove him to the city. After walking for a while, Lao Zhao was truly at the end of his rope. He hid Lao Lu in a concrete pipe and planned to donate blood in exchange for some food. But things didn't go as he hoped. He was found to have had hepatitis B before. Although he had recovered, he still didn't meet the blood donation standards. Lao Zhao had to swallow his pride and beg for some food. While he was gobbling down the food, a man approached him and said he could get paid for donating blood at his place. Lao Zhao followed him in a daze. There were quite a few people like him there. Lao Zhao struck up a conversation with a scavenger lady and learned that she came here once every 3 months and knew the ropes well. Lao Zhao worried that his past hepatitis B might be contagious and that his blood could harm others. As he was arguing with the people there, the police burst through the door. It turned out this was an illegal blood-selling ring, not a legitimate blood donation center at all. Lao Zhao and the scavenger lady were taken to a relief center, which was packed with people, elders, children, and individuals who had encountered all kinds of troubles. This place was like a beacon of redemption amid the chaos of society. The staff gave everyone a full meal and said they had contacted each person's hometown. They would arrange free transportation to send everyone back home. After that, they told everyone to take a good bath and promised a get-together party in the evening to liven things up. Lao Zhao and the scavenger lady signed up to perform a 2-person comic skit. At the party, everyone showed off their talents, and the two of them were no exception. After the party, the two talked more and more, hitting it off. Lao Zhao told her his story, and the lady shared hers about her son. Her son was studying at Southwest University of Finance and Economics. She worked desperately to make money collecting scrap, selling blood, doing whatever she could. At first, she sent money to her son once a month, but later, her son felt embarrassed by her and told her not to visit anymore, saying just sending money was enough. They hadn't seen each other for 2 years. Lao Zhao thought the boy was being unreasonable and needed a good talking to. On that night, 2 people with broken hearts comforted each other's wounds. Lao Zhao promised that after sending Lao Lu back to his hometown, he would come back to find her. The emotional lady insisted on giving Lao Zhao 400 yuan and said she would wait for him here.
不行不行，我不能要，我要你钱干啥？不行，绝对不行！你这捡破烂卖血挣点钱，你给我拿干啥？你看这，
哎呀，
那我还是男的。
他回来的嘛。我反正，我娃在这上学，我也走不了。
Lao Zhao walked along, grinning from ear to ear, overjoyed. But when he went back to find Lao Lu, he discovered that the concrete pipe was about to be hauled away by a truck. Without a second thought, Lao Zhao climbed onto the pipe. Lao Zhao and Lao Lu, hidden in the pipe, were unloaded at a construction site together. After that, hitching rides became much smoother. They switched from a bulldozer to a sand truck, continuing their journey to Lao Lu's hometown. Lao Zhao's mood was as pleasant and clear as the weather at that moment. He couldn't help but recite a poem.
如果我的家乡是一条大路，我就是一辆汽车，我跑啊跑，我多快乐！如果我的家乡是一棵大树，我就是一片树叶，我摇啊摇，我多快乐！
But some cars, some roads, and even some people can only accompany you for a part of the journey. In the end, you have to go your separate ways. After walking a long distance, Lao Zhao finally saw a passenger bus. He took out his money and looked up, only to find the bus was full of children. He gave up the idea of hitching a ride. After all, he was carrying a dead body on his back. When other drivers heard about his situation, no one was willing to give him a lift either. Lao Zhao was completely disheartened. He hung his head and kept walking step by step. After walking for an unknown amount of time, there were suddenly more cars and people around. Many of the drivers were people he had waved down for help before. Some looked curious, some sneered, and some were confused. Surprisingly, a child from the bus full of kids handed him a bottle of water. Lao Zhao took it mechanically, drank it all in one gulp, and kept walking. By this time, he was already numb, moving forward only on sheer willpower. A kind-hearted person told him there was a landslide ahead, but he turned a deaf ear. He walked forward resolutely and finally fainted from exhaustion. When he woke up again, he was lying in a hospital bed. The police had verified the cause of Lao Lu's death, but still couldn't contact his family. According to the rules, individuals were not allowed to transport corpses, and without special circumstances, the body had to be cremated locally. Embarrassed, Lao Zhao was asked to choose an urn for Lao Lu, but he couldn't even afford the cheapest one. Seeing this, the police officer paid for it voluntarily and drove Lao Zhao for the final stretch of the journey. When they arrived at Lao Lu's hometown, they found that the water level had risen due to the Three Gorges Dam construction project. They had to take a boat to get there. The boatman told them that all the villagers here had moved away as part of the resettlement program. When they reached Lao Lu's former home, it was already in ruins, only a door frame still stood. The two of them made a point of walking through the door frame. In a way, this meant Lao Zhao had finally brought Lao Lu home. A door panel lay on the ground, with a line of words written on it. And that's where the movie ends. Looking back at Lao Zhao's journey, we encounter a cast of vivid characters. Robbers who claim to have a code of honor, a tough truck driver with a soft heart, a man who staged his own funeral, a cyclist heading to Tibet, a money-grabbing restaurant owner, a beekeeper living a pastoral life, a scavenger lady who sold blood to support her son, and an entire village displaced by resettlement. These characters represent all walks of life. If you think about it, how many joys and sorrows, partings and reunions are hidden behind their stories? Any single segment taken from the movie leaves a deep impression. It's absurd, yet so real. There are several parts of the film that are particularly worth pondering. Lao Zhao's suicide attempt seems like a darkly humorous scene, but it tugs at your heartstrings. Maybe at that moment, he realized that lying there motionless was the most comfortable and relaxing thing in the world. On his shoulders, he wasn't just carrying a promise, he was also carrying the heavy burden of life that he couldn't shake off for years. But except for death, no one can lie there forever. Everyone knows it's better to be alive, but sometimes, living is just too tiring. How many people who have cried over life have ever had the thought of dying? The scene where Lao Zhao struggles with the tire is also brilliantly done. It not only showcases the lead actor's masterful performance, but also carries deep symbolism, a migrant worker wrestling with a tire. There are 300 million migrant workers in China, and in a sense, every one of them is wrestling with a tire. As an iconic symbol of the industrial age, the tire holds profound meaning here. Inside that tire, there isn't just Lao Zhao's promise, it's the living reality of 300 million migrant workers. That's why using this scene as the movie's poster is so perfect. Of course, the most artistic, profound, and romantic moment in the film is when Lao Zhao recites poetry while sitting on a truck. He's exhausted, disheveled, and even thought about dying once. But life itself is a long road movie. Meeting good people, bad people, experiencing joys and sorrows, none of these are surprising. We all need to keep moving forward, living our lives with dust on our shoulders. But just being alive isn't enough. We also need sunshine, freedom, and a touch of beauty. And understanding the meaning of these small joys is always more important than just seeing the hardships. Finally, I want to say that after watching this movie, I suddenly realized how well-suited road movies are to China. With its vast land and diverse folk customs, there are so many stories waiting for filmmakers to explore. I also hope I can bring more great Chinese movies to audiences around the world. Thank you for your support. I'm Tender. Follow me, and I'll see you next time.